From the moment she began singing, Sydnie Christmas learned how to face the world by lifting her chin and taking a breath, even when fear sat heavily in her chest. Her voice would one day move audiences across countries, but behind that powerful sound were countless nights filled with doubt, silence, and no applause at all. Sydnie Christmas reached great heights, but success did not come without a cost. While the spotlight brought recognition and praise, it also revealed the cracks within her, the exhaustion, the fear, and the quiet struggle she carried inside. At one point, Sydnie openly admitted that she was simply trying to ride the wave of success for as long as it would carry her. By the age of 30, she was already speaking honestly about fear, burnout, and moments when she wished she could disappear from the stage altogether. These were thoughts she had kept hidden for years. There were days when she felt she should be doing more, days when she did not know what to say, and moments when she knew she needed help but did not know how to ask for it. Slowly, the private world she had guarded began to open. In 2025, after turning 30, Sydnie Christmas had already completed sold-out shows and made multiple television appearances. She was no longer an unfamiliar name in the UK or the US. Yet, during interviews following her tour, she began to speak about something her fans had never fully heard before. In a recorded conversation in London, she admitted that she had once wanted to quit entirely. She said she was so scared that she could not face the audience as her true self. For many people, this was the first time she openly confirmed what had been quietly discussed for months. After her major television victory in 2024, Sydnie was seen as a symbol of revival for classical stage music. She appeared confident and composed, but those close to her noticed habits that told a different story. Whenever she received applause, she bowed her head quickly, gripping the microphone tightly with both hands as if holding on for balance. This became a familiar sight during the early nights of her tour. Her manager later shared that before every major performance, Sydnie would stand silently backstage for several minutes. Sometimes she closed her eyes. Sometimes she turned away and took deep, steady breaths. The crew grew used to these moments, understanding that they were part of her process. When asked directly about those tense moments, Sydnie did not hide the truth. She admitted that she often gagged before stepping onto the stage and had to remind herself not to run away. When this quote from her BBC interview spread across social media, many viewers realized that the slight shaking at the beginning of her performances was not part of an act. Critics described it as stage fright that often comes with great careers, noting that many successful artists had shared similar experiences. Still, Sydnie's situation felt different. She was a winner who appeared deeply anxious about her own success. After the first part of her tour ended, Sydnie spoke openly about another feeling that haunted her, the belief that she did not deserve her achievements. During a Radio Times broadcast, she admitted that she constantly felt she was not good enough and feared that one day someone would discover she was just ordinary. This honesty reshaped the way people saw her. She was no longer only a symbol of luck and talent but also a reflection of the pressure that comes with fame. By speaking openly about fear and insecurity, she allowed audiences to connect with her on a human level. At 30, Sydnie Christmas stepped beyond the need to appear perfect. She no longer had to prove she was flawless to remain on stage. Instead, she stood before audiences who now understood the person behind the voice, making her journey feel more real than ever. Her confessions, however, were only a small part of a much longer story. Before the bright lights and large stages, there was once a young girl trembling before a microphone in the town of Gravesend. From that quiet place, her dream of performing slowly began to take shape. Sydnie Christmas was born in 1995 in Gravesend, a small town in Kent. The area where she grew up was calm and modest, filled with small shops and local schools. Her family did not have a background in the arts, but they always encouraged her to sing whenever she felt inspired. From a very young age, Sydnie showed a natural ability for music. She sang at school events and in her local church, her voice untrained but full of emotion and strength. Her music teacher quickly noticed her potential. As she entered her teenage years, Sydnie felt increasingly drawn to the stage. Performing in small school productions allowed her to experience what it felt like to be seen and heard, even if only for a short time. During those years, the idea of becoming a professional singer took root in her mind. It was a big dream for someone growing up in a quiet riverside town, but it was one she could not let go of. In her final year of high school, Sydnie decided to apply to a performing arts academy in London. The process was demanding, requiring strong vocal skills, acting ability, and a sense of rhythm. She practiced relentlessly, spending months recording herself and correcting every small mistake. When the results were announced, she learned she had been accepted. The years that followed were some of the hardest she had ever experienced. Her days were filled with long classes that combined singing, dancing, and acting from morning until night. Many students dropped out under the pressure, but Sydnie chose to endure quietly. She often stayed behind after classes, practicing alone in front of the mirror, focusing on her breathing and pronunciation. Her instructors noticed her discipline, describing it as unusual for someone so young. In 2014, she completed her training and graduated. That same year, she took her first steps into the professional theater world. Her first opportunity came when she was cast in the musical Lazarus at a small London theater. Though her role was a supporting one, it marked an important turning point. The production demanded strong vocal control and precise acting, and Sydnie adapted quickly. She earned the trust of the director and the respect of her colleagues. One fellow performer later recalled that she always arrived before rehearsals began and was the last to leave the stage. Slowly, her dedication helped her name become known within the theater community. Despite her training and early performances, her career path was far from smooth. Once she stepped outside the structure of school, she faced the reality of makeshift stages and repetitive roles. This was when the difference between dreams and reality became clear. Progress felt slow, and stagnation became a constant fear. From 2014 onward, Sydnie moved fully into the world of professional performance. She joined traveling musical groups, accepted small projects, and worked in commercial shows. Her life became a cycle of packed schedules and constant travel between cities. These groups often changed locations every few weeks, and Sydnie usually played supporting roles, sometimes appearing only briefly on stage. The work provided financial stability, but recognition remained limited. Years passed, and while colleagues praised her professionalism and vocal strength, audiences still did not remember her face or name. In 2016, she accepted a role with an international cruise line performance group. Each voyage lasted several months, giving her valuable experience and the chance to perform for audiences from different cultures. However, life at sea also brought isolation. Being away for so long distanced her from the London theatre scene she had once hoped to build her career in. Later, Sydnie admitted that this period taught her discipline and resilience, but also made her feel like she was drifting outside the main world of the performing industry. When she eventually returned from her tours, she noticed her name no longer appeared on casting lists for major London theatres. The realization was painful. In 2019, she made a bold decision to change direction. Sydnie moved to Germany after being offered a role in Starlight Express, one of Europe's longest-running musicals. Being accepted into the production was a professional achievement, even though it was far from home. At first, she felt proud, but that feeling soon gave way to emptiness. In an interview with a local newspaper, she shared that although she was grateful for the opportunity, it felt like she was standing still in a place that did not truly feel like hers. She worked hard and even learned German so she could communicate better with her colleagues. After each performance, she returned to her small apartment, wondering when she would finally find her way back to London and the career she once imagined. When the pandemic struck in 2020 and performances came to a halt, Sydnie remained in Germany and searched for temporary work just to survive. It was a period filled with uncertainty, reflection, and quiet endurance, shaping the person she would later become on stage and beyond it. She signed a part-time contract in a nearby gym to support herself during that difficult time. When people later asked why she chose that job, Sydnie answered simply that she did everything she could just to keep chasing art. It was not about the job itself, but about surviving long enough to stay close to her dream. When theaters slowly reopened, Sydnie returned to auditioning, hoping the long pause would offer new chances. Instead, opportunities were limited. Many productions preferred familiar faces or already well-known stars. She continued to send applications to small theater groups and television programs, but most of them were never answered. Each rejection forced her to tell herself to wait a little longer and stay patient. As months passed, the psychological pressure grew heavier. She watched people her age and younger build solid careers, while her own progress felt uncertain. More than once, Sydnie questioned whether she had chosen the right path. During this period, she wrote a sentence in her notebook that later became deeply meaningful to her fans. She wrote that working hard does not always mean people will see you. That line perfectly described her nearly 10 years of quiet struggle. She had spent almost a decade training, performing, and sacrificing, yet remained unseen by the wider public. Then, after years of effort and doubt, she finally reached a moment that had the power to change everything. It would come down to one stage, one song, and one opportunity she had once been too afraid to take. It marked the beginning of a new chapter and the final test of all her perseverance. In 2024, Sydnie Christmas stepped onto the stage of a popular television talent show with the feeling that she was placing everything she had on the line. She was nearly 30 years old and had already missed several chances earlier in life. Joining the competition this time felt like her final option, a decision made when it seemed that every other door had closed. For her audition, Sydnie chose the song Tomorrow. She appeared on stage wearing a simple outfit, her smile nervous but genuine. Her voice began quietly, yet with firmness. As the music started, the room grew silent. Her voice soon filled the space, powerful, clear, and full of emotion. The judges lifted their heads in surprise. By the time she reached the final note, the audience was already on its feet. Amanda Holden, one of the most experienced judges on the show, pressed the golden buzzer as cheers echoed through the hall. Confetti fell from above, covering the stage. Sydnie stood frozen for a moment, tears streaming down her face, unable to speak. When she finally gathered herself, she softly said that she never thought she deserved that moment. Those few words were quoted by hundreds of newspapers and shared widely online. Many viewers described her audition as the moment that made the entire country pause for a few minutes. The impact was immediate and overwhelming. Within a single day, the video of her performance had been watched millions of times. The media wrote that Sydnie did more than sing. Through every lyric, she told the story of years spent waiting, hoping, and refusing to give up. In interviews after the audition, Sydnie appeared calmer and more grounded. She explained that being chosen was not just luck, but also her last chance to prove to herself that she belonged on the stage. Although audiences began calling her a phenomenon, she remained modest and thoughtful, speaking slowly and often ending her answers with a small, gentle smile. As she advanced to the semi-finals, the pressure increased sharply. The show attracted millions of viewers every week, and expectations placed on her grew rapidly. For this round, Sydnie chose the song My Way. Many considered it a risky choice because it was closely associated with legendary performers. For Sydnie, however, it felt like the most honest reflection of her own journey. The performance began in complete silence. She stood alone in a single beam of light, with no dancers and no distractions. Her voice started low and steady, then gradually rose with confidence. When she sang the final line, the hall exploded with applause that seemed to last forever. The judges described the performance as one that made people forget time. The next morning, newspapers across the country featured her photograph with headlines calling her the woman who turned my way into her own life story. Viewers noticed a clear change in her presence. She stood taller, her eyes focused, her movements calm and assured. The familiar shyness appeared to have faded. When the results were announced, Sydnie received the highest number of votes in the semi-finals. From that point on, many began predicting that she would be a strong contender for the championship. Online discussions were filled with praise, with many people agreeing that her voice was something rare in modern entertainment. By the time she reached the finals, the pressure was greater than ever. For her final performance, Sydnie chose Over the Rainbow, a classic song deeply connected to many legendary voices. her choice carried a simple message that dreams remain alive, even when the journey takes longer than expected. During rehearsals, she practiced the most challenging part of the song repeatedly, determined to give it her best. On the night of the finale, the stage was covered in soft blue light. A thin mist surrounded her as she walked forward, her attention fixed on the orchestra. When she began to sing, her voice filled the hall with strength and tenderness. The audience listened in complete silence, as if afraid to break the moment. When the final note faded, the entire audience stood and applauded. The results that followed confirmed what many already believed. Sydnie Christmas was announced as the champion of the season. When her name was called, she smiled calmly instead of crying. She bowed in gratitude, gripping the microphone with both hands, a familiar gesture that symbolized her quiet determination. That image became one of the most memorable moments of the season, representing an artist who had endured years of being overlooked. Although the finale ended, its impact lasted for weeks. Morning news programs, radio shows, and social media platforms continued to talk about her story. Sydnie Christmas became a symbol of artistic rebirth for those who had once felt forgotten. Winning the competition was only the beginning of a new chapter. Once the studio lights dimmed, Sydnie entered a completely different phase of her life. She now faced the challenge of proving that her victory was not just a single moment, but the foundation of a lasting career built on her own terms. At the end of 2024, she returned to the recording studio with a clear goal. She wanted to create an album that truly reflected who she was, featuring songs that had accompanied her throughout the competition and her personal journey. The album was released under a simple title and brought together music that reflected her emotions and experiences. At the launch event, Sydnie explained that she wanted every song to represent a chapter of her life. That statement was widely shared in the press, showing how deeply she connected music to her personal story. Audiences responded warmly, not only to her voice, but to the honesty present in every recording. Soon after the album's release, her management announced a nationwide tour across the United Kingdom. From large cities like London and Manchester to smaller theaters in Scotland, tickets sold out within days. The media described it as a rare achievement for an artist who had only recently emerged from a television show. On stage, Sydnie maintained a simple style, avoiding elaborate backdrops. She focused entirely on her voice, standing under a single spotlight, just as she had during the competition. Each night felt intimate, with audiences singing along and sharing the experience closely with her. After the tour concluded, Sydnie was invited to perform at the Royal Variety Event, an annual program attended by members of the royal family and major cultural figures. Being included in the lineup marked a significant step forward in her career. Her performance was graceful and controlled, highlighting her vocal technique. As the song ended, the audience stood in applause. Newspapers the following day praised her performance as one of the most heartfelt and dignified moments of the evening. That appearance opened another door. In early 2025, Sydnie received an invitation to perform in the United States. Her schedule included appearances on morning television shows and a series of trial performances in New York. Despite it being her first time performing there, all tickets sold out before opening night. On talk shows, she appeared calm and confident. Editors described her as a European voice carrying the spirit of classic theater. With each broadcast, her online following grew rapidly. In New York, Sydnie performed 2 consecutive shows at a mid-sized Broadway theater before traveling to Los Angeles. Every performance sold out, proving that her appeal extended beyond her home country. Her restrained, voice-centered performance style helped her stand out in a fast-paced entertainment environment. After returning to the UK, she continued working on stage projects, including a new role in a contemporary musical in London. Directors praised her ability to blend singing and acting naturally, without exaggeration. Throughout 2025, Sydnie appeared on the covers of several art magazines, presenting a new image that was mature, professional, and focused. The media noted that she had moved beyond the label of a television competition winner and had become an artist with a clear creative direction. She chose projects based on quality rather than fame. In interviews, she rarely mentioned her competition title, choosing instead to speak about her future plans. She revealed that she was preparing a second album featuring original songs, a project that would further demonstrate her creativity and artistic independence. From small hometown stages to major theaters in the United States, Sydnie Christmas showed that a sincere voice can cross borders. Every project she took on reflected her deep respect for artistic work and the value of patience. At this stage of her life, she stood exactly where she had always hoped to be. Her journey tells the story of an artist shaped by time, effort, and honesty. From a quiet town in Kent to international stages, she never chased instant fame. Instead, she built her path step by step through genuine skill and perseverance. Now at 30, Sydnie no longer feels the need to prove anything. Her confessions, her performances, and even her moments of silence have created the truest portrait of who she is. She continues to sing with honesty, and that sincerity remains at the heart of her success. That is how Sydnie Christmas stays true to herself while standing in the light.